The amber sun hung low on the horizon, painting the crystalline rocks in shades of honey and bronze. Mira Vex wiped the blood from her hunting blade and allowed herself a satisfied smile. The Drethwing's massive carcass lay before her, easily 12 feet from wingtip to wingtip, iridescent scales still catching the fading light. She'd been on this forsaken planet for 3 weeks now, ever since her research vessel had crashed. And she'd learned quickly that everything here either wanted to eat her or poison her, so naturally. She'd started eating them first. The Drethwing had taken 2 full days to track. These creatures were legendary among the local Vascaron people apex predators that hunted in the twilight hours, their razor-sharp talons capable of shearing through most metals. The locals told stories about entire hunting parties being decimated by a single Drethwing. They spoke of these beasts in hushed, reverent tones. Mira had shot it 3 times, stabbed it twice, and finally brought it down with a combat move her father had taught her back on the farming colonies of Proxima. Now it was dinner. She'd already started the fire, using dried stalks from the local vegetation that burned with a pleasant, vanilla-like aroma. The makeshift spit she'd constructed was holding up well, and the first sections of meat were beginning to char beautifully. The smell was extraordinarily rich and gamey, with an almost sweet undertone. Her stomach growled in appreciation. Myra had just settled onto a smooth boulder, tearing into a piece of the perfectly cooked thigh meat, when she heard the distinct hum of a Vascaran hovercraft approaching. She didn't bother standing up or reaching for her weapon. If they'd wanted her dead, they would have bombed her from orbit weeks ago. The craft settled near her camp with barely a whisper, and a single figure emerged. Mira felt her breath catch despite herself. He was tall even for a Vascaran, easily 7 feet of corded muscle, wrapped in form-fitting tactical armor that seemed to shift colors with his movements. His skin had that characteristic deep blue tint of his people, but his was darker, almost midnight in the fading light. Silver markings traced down his arms in intricate patterns that she knew indicated warrior status. His hair was black as space itself, pulled back in a traditional warrior's knot. And his eyes, those striking golden eyes, were currently locked onto her with an expression of pure shock. "By the 7 moons," he breathed, his voice a deep rumble that did absolutely inappropriate things to her pulse. His translator rendered his words in perfect standard. "You're eating a Drethwing." Myra grinned, juice running down her chin. She wiped it away with the back of her hand. "Want some?" "I've got plenty." The warrior took a step closer, his movements liquid and predatory. Everything about him screamed danger, from the weapon strapped to his thighs to the ceremonial scars that traced along his jawline. "I am Talon Steelwinged, second blade of the Windborn clan. I was sent to check on the human survivor and offer escort back to the settlement." "Myra Vex," she replied, taking another bite. "Food scientist, currently unemployed due to catastrophic spacecraft failure. And I appreciate the offer, but I'm good here." Talon's golden eyes traveled from her face to the massive Drethwing carcass, then back again. "You killed this alone?" "Yep, with what weapons?" Mira gestured to her standard-issue plasma pistol and the combat knife she'd been using. "These mostly, though I'll admit the last bit got a little hands-on. Hands-on." His voice had dropped even lower, taking on a quality that made her very aware of how alone they were. "You engaged a Drethwing in close combat. Well, when you run out of plasma charges, you improvise." She patted the rock beside her. "Seriously, sit down. This is actually incredible. Tastes like a cross between venison and something sweet I can't quite place. Maybe honey-glazed duck?" Talon approached slowly, as if she were the dangerous predator instead of the dead creature behind her. "Our finest warriors spend years training before they dare hunt Drethwings. Most never succeed. The beasts are too fast, too intelligent, too delicious." Mira interrupted, holding up a perfectly cooked piece of meat. "Come on, warrior. Live a little." He sat, and Mera became acutely aware of just how large he was. The rock that had felt spacious suddenly seemed intimate. His armor was scratched and worn in places, telling stories of countless battles. A fresh scar ran along his collarbone, disappearing beneath his chest plate. "Your people believed you would be dead," Talon said, accepting the offered meat with surprising delicacy. "When your ship went down in the Crimson Wastes, the Council declared it an unfortunate tragedy. No one survives the wastes. Not for 3 weeks." Myra shrugged. "I'm full of surprises." She watched with poorly concealed interest as he took a bite. His eyes widened, and for a moment his stoic warrior facade cracked. This is extraordinary, right?" Mira leaned back, satisfied. "I've been documenting everything. If I ever get off this rock, I'm publishing a cookbook. Eating the things that try to eat you. A guide to hostile planet cuisine." Talon laughed an actual, genuine laugh that transformed his entire face. "You are not what I expected, Maravex." "What did you expect?" A terrified scientist, cowering in the wreckage of her ship, waiting for rescue. "Boring," Myra declared. "I spent 6 years studying xenobiology and exocuisine. Do you know how rare it is to find genuinely novel protein sources? This planet is a gold mine. Most of my people would call it a death trap. Same thing, really." She met his golden eyes and felt that spark again, the one that had nothing to do with the campfire. "So, Talon Steelwind, second blade of the Windborn clan, are you here to drag me back to civilization? Or can I convince you to try the roasted predator lifestyle?" He studied her for a long moment, and Myra could practically see him reassessing everything he thought he knew. "I was given orders to ensure your safety and offer transport. However," he glanced at the Drethwing carcass and back at her, "I find myself curious about your methods. My methods involve a lot of running, some creative cursing, and occasionally setting things on fire." She reached for another piece of meat. "Also, I'm an excellent cook. I can see that." His tone had shifted, becoming warmer. "Tell me, how did you track it?" As Mayra launched into the story, demonstrating tracking techniques and survival strategies, she noticed Talon leaning closer. His attention was completely focused on her, those golden eyes tracking her every movement. The sun continued its descent, painting everything in shades of crimson and gold, and a fire crackled merrily between them. "The trick," Mira explained, gesturing with a piece of meat, "is understanding that these creatures, despite being apex predators, still follow patterns. They have preferred hunting grounds, specific times when they're most active, vulnerabilities in their scales where the plates overlap." "You studied all this in 3 weeks?" Talon interrupted, clearly impressed. "I'm a fast learner. Plus, when the alternative is becoming something else's dinner, you tend to pay attention." She paused, suddenly aware of how his gaze had settled on her lips. "What?" "Nothing," he said quickly, but his voice had roughened. "It's just ... You speak of these creatures with such passion. Most view them only as threats. Everything that tries to kill you teaches you something," Myra replied softly. "Usually about yourself." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something beyond mere conversation. Talon's armor reflected the firelight in dancing patterns, and Myra found herself wondering what he looked like beneath all that tactical gear. His hand rested on the rock between them, close enough that she could see the silver markings that traced across his knuckles. "Your people don't fear death," Talon observed. "Even alone on a hostile world, you don't fear." "Oh, I fear plenty of things," Myra admitted. "Just not the obvious ones. What do you fear?" She met his eyes directly. "Wasting opportunities. Not taking chances when they present themselves. Living a safe, boring life when I could be out here, eating apex predators, and meeting fascinating warriors with incredible eyes. Talon's breath caught. Myra, a sharp crack echoed across the canyon, and both of them were on their feet instantly, weapons drawn. The local vegetation had suddenly gone silent, never a good sign. The winds shifted, Talon said quietly, his warrior instincts clearly engaged. They've caught the scent. They? Myra asked, though she suspected she knew. Drethwings hunt in family groups. You killed this one's mate. His golden eyes scanned the darkening sky. The rest of the pack will be coming. Mira felt her heart rate spike, partly from the threat, mostly from the way Talon had instinctively moved closer to her, his body positioned protectively. How many are we talking? If it's a standard family unit? 5, maybe 6. Great. She checked her plasma pistol's charge. I'm down to maybe 2 full charges. Talon's jaw tightened. My craft can hold us both, but we need to reach it before. Another crack, closer this time. Then another. The shadows around them seemed to writhe and shift. Too late, Myra whispered. They're already here. The first Drethwing struck from above with terrifying speed, its talons extended like scythes. Talon moved with fluid grace, his blade singing through the air and catching the creature mid-flight. It shrieked a sound that made Myra's teeth ache and veered away, dark blood trailing from its wing. My shelter, Mira shouted over the growing chaos. Reinforced walls, designed for exactly this. Another Drethwing dove from the opposite direction. Myra fired her plasma pistol, the shot catching it square in the chest. The creature tumbled from the sky, crashing into the rocks with bone-breaking force. But there were more shadows circling above them, their hunting cries echoing off the canyon walls. How far? Talon demanded, his golden eyes tracking multiple targets simultaneously. 200 meters due east. Mira was already running, her boots finding purchase on the uneven ground. Behind her, she could hear Talon's heavier footfalls, the whistle of his blade cutting through air and flesh alike. The sky erupted with movement. 3 Drethwings descended in perfect formation, their attack coordinated with predatory intelligence. Mira dropped and rolled, coming up firing. Her shot went wide, but it bought them precious seconds. Talon didn't waste them. His blade found its mark in the lead creature's throat, and his follow-through took him into a spinning strike that forced the other 2 to break formation. You fight well for a scientist, he called out, breathless, but somehow making it sound like an invitation. You should see me in a lab coat, Mira shot back, plasma bolt taking down another attacker. Really brings out my eyes. They reached the shelter as the first drops of rain began to fall. But this wasn't ordinary rain. The liquid hissed where it struck the rocks, eating into the stone with acidic fury. A storm was rolling in fast, the sky turning from amber to sickly green. Acid storm. Talon recognized it immediately. We need cover now. Mira slammed her palm against the shelter's access panel. The door hissed open, revealing the cramped but reinforced interior. She dove inside, Talon right behind her. A Drethwing lunged for the opening, its massive head forcing through, and Talon's blade drove straight through its eye. The creature shrieked once and went limp, its body blocking the doorway. Together, they heaved the carcass aside. Myra hit the door control, and the reinforced metal slammed shut just as another predator crashed against it from outside. The impact rang through the shelter like a bell. That'll hold, Mira panted, her back against the door. Designed it to withstand a siege. Talon stood facing her, chest heaving, his armor splattered with dark blood and glowing with residual acid rain. In the shelter's soft emergency lighting, he looked like something from a warrior's legend, dangerous, powerful, and impossibly attractive. You built this yourself? He asked, surveying the compact but efficient space. First week here. Crashed ship provided most of the materials. Mira was acutely aware of how small the shelter suddenly felt. It had seemed spacious when she was alone. With Talon's massive frame filling half the space, it felt intimate. The storms here are ... aggressive. Another impact shook the walls. The Dreathwings hadn't given up yet. They'll continue attacking until dawn, Talon said, moving to examine the door's integrity. His movements brought him closer to Mira, close enough that she could smell him something like ozone and spice, with an undertone that was uniquely him. Or until the storm drives them to shelter. So we're stuck here. Myra tried to keep her voice steady. Together. In very close quarters. Talon turned to look at her, and the expression in his golden eyes made her breath catch. Does that trouble you? Trouble isn't the word I'd use. The shelter systems hummed softly around them, maintaining temperature and atmosphere. But the air between them felt charged with something beyond mere environmental controls. Outside, the storm's fury intensified. Acid rain drummed against the reinforced walls in a chaotic rhythm, punctuated by the screams of frustrated predators. I should check your injuries, Talon said, his voice rougher than before. The Dreathwing that nearly caught you barely scratched me. Mira interrupted, but she was already feeling the adrenaline fade, replaced by an awareness of various aches and pains. You, on the other hand, took a direct hit from that second one. Armor absorbed most of it. But as he spoke, Talon reached up to unfasten his chest plate. The catches released with soft clicks, and Mira found herself unable to look away as he removed the damaged armor. Beneath it, his tactical suit clung to him like a second skin, revealing the sculpted lines of his torso. The silver markings she'd seen on his arms continued across his chest in intricate patterns that seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light. A fresh wound traced along his ribs, not deep, but bleeding steadily. That needs treatment, Myra said, forcing herself into practical mode. She moved to her medical supplies, pulling out the kit she'd modified to work with Vascaran physiology. Sit, Talon complied, settling onto the shelter's single bunk. It creaked under his weight, but held. Myra approached with antiseptic and bandages, trying not to think about how she was about to put her hands on him. This might sting, she warned. Kneeling beside the bunk, I've endured worse. But his breath hitched when she began cleaning the wound. Her fingers gentle against his skin. The silver markings fascinated her. Up close, she could see they weren't tattoos, but something biological raised slightly from his skin, almost luminescent. These patterns, she murmured, tracing one carefully. They're beautiful. Talon's entire body tensed under her touch. They mark achievements in battle. Each one represents a victory, a challenge overcome. You have a lot of them. Her fingers followed the lines across his ribs, ostensibly checking for other injuries, but lingering longer than strictly necessary. I've lived a warrior's life. His voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Until tonight, I thought I understood what that meant. What strength looked like. Myra looked up and found his golden eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her dizzy. And now? Now I've watched a human woman half my size bring down creatures that terrify my people. I've seen you laugh in the face of death, turn predators into dinner, build shelter from wreckage. His hand came up, fingers brushing along her jawline with surprising gentleness. You've redefined my understanding of strength, Mira Vex. Talon ... double quotes. Her protest died as his thumb traced her lower lip. Tell me to stop, he whispered, leaning closer. Tell me this is inappropriate, that I'm here on official business, that our peoples barely know each other. Mira closed the remaining distance between them, her lips finding his in a kiss that was anything but gentle. It was fierce and hungry, tasting of adrenaline and desire, and something deeper that neither of them wanted to name yet. Talon responded instantly, his arms wrapping around her and lifting her easily onto his lap. The medical supplies scattered, forgotten. His mouth was hot against hers, demanding and giving in equal measure. Myra's fingers tangled in his hair, releasing it from its warrior's knot so it fell like silk around his shoulders. "We shouldn't," she gasped when they broke apart for air. "Probably not," Talon agreed, his lips already moving down her throat, finding the pulse point that made her gasp. "Say the word and I stop." Instead, Mira pulled him closer, answering with her body what she couldn't quite articulate with words. Outside, the storm raged with catastrophic fury. The Drethwing's cries eventually faded as they sought their own shelter. But inside, a different kind of storm was building. Talon's hands found the fastenings of her tactical vest, his fingers surprisingly deft. "I've wanted this since I saw you sitting there, covered in blood and victory, grinning like you just had the best day of your life." "I had killed a Drethwing," Mira reminded him breathlessly, working at the catches of his tactical suit. "That was a pretty good day. You're magnificent." He lifted her easily, laying her back on the bunk and following her down. The space was barely large enough for one person, let alone two, but neither of them cared. Terrifying and magnificent. "Keep talking like that and you'll make me blush," Mira teased, then forgot how to form words as his mouth found the hollow of her throat. They came together with an urgency, born of danger survived, an attraction too powerful to deny. Talon was careful despite his size, his warrior's control evident in every touch, every kiss. Myra matched him move for move, refusing to be passive, claiming him as thoroughly as he claimed her. The shelter's emergency lighting cast them in shades of amber and shadow. Talon's markings seemed to glow brighter as their passion intensified, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Myra traced them with her fingers, her lips, learning the map of his body as he learned hers. "Tell me what you want," Talon murmured against her skin, his voice rough with barely restrained need. "You," Myra breathed. "All of you, now." What followed was intense and overwhelming, a perfect fusion of tenderness and raw passion. They moved together as they'd fought together, in perfect synchronization, each anticipating the other's needs. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one they created between them. Time lost meaning. There was only sensation, the slide of skin against skin, the taste of him on her lips, the weight of him above her, the sound of her name in his voice as he drove them both toward the edge and over it. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the too small bunk, hearts racing, breathing hard. Talon's arms were wrapped around her protectively, keeping her anchored against his chest. Mira could feel the steady thrum of his heartbeat, gradually slowing to normal. That was ... began. "Yeah," Myra agreed, her fingers tracing lazy patterns across his chest. "It really was." He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I should probably tell you that among my people this is significant." Myra felt her heart skip. Define significant. Intimacy isn't casual for Vascarans. When we choose someone, it means something. Creates bonds that aren't easily broken. His golden eyes searched hers. "I should have explained before. Would it have changed anything?" Mira interrupted softly. Talon considered, and smiled a real, open smile that transformed his entire face. "No, not a damn thing. Good answer." She kissed him again, slower this time, savoring it. Outside, the storm continued its assault, but gradually its fury began to wane. The acid rain slowed to a drizzle, then stopped altogether. The sky beyond the shelter's small window started to lighten from sickly green to pale lavender, the first hints of dawn. "We should rest," Talon murmured, though he made no move to release her. "The Drethwings will have scattered, but the journey back to my settlement will be dangerous." "Are we going back?" Mira asked. "To your settlement?" "That depends." His hand traced along her spine, sending pleasant shivers through her. Are you still content to stay out here alone, hunting predators and eating them for dinner? Mira thought about her solitary camp, her research, her plans to document this planet's ecosystem. Then she thought about the man holding her, about the connection they'd forged in fire and passion, about how alive she'd felt fighting beside him. Maybe alone isn't the best approach anymore, she admitted. Talon's smile against her hair was warm. I was hoping you'd say that. They drifted off as the alien sun rose, painting the shelter in shades of crimson and gold, wrapped in each other's arms, while the world outside slowly came back to life.